Kelly, thank you very much. And I want to thank everybody that made the decision to attend this webinar and taking valuable time out of your day will make it worthwhile. And to me, a webinar is worthwhile when you get right to the show and tell portion, the demo, and a real demo. I mean, we're using our E1 and our JDE, our app, our platform, our connectors to the various gateways and processors out there. So Matt Minchuk will be doing the demo. I'm just going to quickly go through the slide because I will follow up with sending you the slide deck. I should say Callie will. So let me run through the slides and then we'll get right to Matt's portion. So first off, K-Rise, we've been around since 2005. We've worked with hundreds of JDE companies. We're very much accredited and certified in the JD Edwards Oracle space, and we are a software company, so we don't do like upgrades other than to our apps and our platforms, but not JDE. We're not a services company, we're a software company. We do the services associated with our platform and our apps. And like I said, we've worked with hundreds of companies. You can see some of the bigger companies on the bottom. Many of those customers noted use EasyPay. Others do work with other apps that we provide, being a low-code platform company. And let's talk about the validations and the certifications, especially for credit card. So for credit card, there's an industry consortium, and they very, very much have legal authority dealing with issues like PCI scope and, heaven forbid, a PCI audit. As you all know, that you are responsible for cyber security, both from your side and the vendors that you choose. And that's why we are very much PCI DSS compliant. We've got an auditor doing quarterly scans, doing the annual reports, obviously on the Oracle side too. When you get into something like payments, especially if you want the payments functionality to exist inside of E1, and Matt's going to go through scenarios that show you don't have to have it in E1. You can, we can do it outside of E1 forms, but the OVI certification, and we are certified both 32 and 64-bit, it's very, very important, especially with a payments app. As an example, with OVI, JDE has assigned to K-Rise Systems JDE System 99 codes. So what that means is they don't want us with our value add software to be using, the custom 55, 56 tables. Matt's going to run a scenario with, as an example, EasyPay inside of the P4210 or Power Forms, and he's going to tag it as a credit card, and it brings up a PQ99 form, and that's an example. But you don't need to go to that extent. We can keep JD Edwards completely vanilla. And by the way, bottom right, SOC2 Type 2. This is also very, very important because it's not just our app working with the processors and the gateways. And by the way, a gateway is required for card not present. So if you're dealing with e-commerce or CSRs or a call desk where they're working with the customers with, say, credit card payments, card not present requires a gateway. And so SOC 2 Type 2, we're CPI certified. We work in the AWS cloud, and a lot of the payment considerations dealing with security are tied to the infrastructure. And as everybody knows, AWS is very, very secure. They have to be. They have a lot of government contracts. And then on the JD Edwards side, these are slides presented by JD Edwards over the years. And they promote keeping JD Edwards vanilla. They promote, our low-code platform. You see that in the upper right. And so that's the approach that we take with integration. We're, over the last few years, doing more and more orchestration integrations. We got a great platform service that allows us to map to the orchestration APIs quickly and easily. Or we can take responsibility for creating them if you want us to go to that level. but it's a very, very good architecture. Our platform does extend to providing value add JDE applications across the business. We're focused on sales today. We've got an e-commerce solution. We do a lot of projects in the spend procurement area with vendor onboarding and AP invoice automation and buyer supplier portals for changing POs and acknowledging POs, ASN functionality. And then I'm not going to go through everything, but you see we do a lot of portals and master record, data type projects, be it inventory or purchase order or customer onboarding. And we have many, many companies. All of these are JDE. Most of them are E1. And that's the area that we focus on for 17 years now. And PCI compliance. So PCI compliance you have PCI compliance on your side. So as an example, call centers no longer repeats the credit card over the telephone. I mean, that's subject to eavesdropping and PCI breach situation. We've got PCI requirements on our side. We have to have an auditor. And they're trust wave, and they have to go through they're the ones that manages our mandated PCI documents and our scans, working against our AWS environment. And this simply gets into a lot of the details involved on the PCI security. And I'm not going to go through it. Once again, you're going to get a slide deck after we're done. And the PCI, what it is, it's 12 primary rules tied to about 450 controls. And the red there ties to, we used to do on-prem. We no longer promote on-prem. We are a SaaS cloud company, and especially with a payments app, things like, protect stored cardholder data. And what PCI refers to that is the processing, the submit process, the tokenization involved with the payment record. And by the way, a token, once it's tokenized, a token is not sensitive. It simply references the payment profile inside the gateway that you're using, and we'll touch on that. A little bit more on our integrations. When Matt does the demo, he's going to do it from our primary use case scenarios. And the first one is an AR portal. And this is, our platform and a web page that can be used by customers for online bill paying an invoice, looking up AR information, what's my credit available balance, payments, statements. Finance can log in. When an employee logs in, let's say a finance, a CSR login, they search then on a customer and they impersonate them. They can do the same thing. We've got great auto pay functionality. Auto pay directly relates to reducing PCI scope inside of a company, and Matt's going to demonstrate that. If you're interested in the sales order, and sales order is a primary focus, Matt's going to show a couple of different scenarios, a JD Edwards interactive, and that's once again that PQ99 form, tied to identifying the transaction as a payments transaction. A common way is through the payment terms. And then he's going to show something that's real popular, once again, because of reducing PCI scope. That's what companies want. And it's workflow automation. It's a payment email that goes to the customer. And you see those bullet items underneath it. I'm simply noting that the logic involved in what's going on with that payment is it ties to the JDE transaction. We can do a full authorization, which is the subtotal of the order plus, it might be a fudge factor. Maybe you don't know the freight, so you put a fudge factor of 5-10%. We can look up tax, from business function, Vertex and JD Edwards, or orchestration, or an outside Avalara. Let's see, Lutron uses taxware, so we can do a cloud call for getting the tax. You can logically say zero authorization. This is B2B business. We don't even have to bother putting a fund at order crate at the authorization. We'll simply do it when we ship it. You know, say it's at that status, ship confirmation is an example. And then you could do a prepay. So a prepay is like when you walk in and get a book, at Barnes and Noble, you do a sale. They're doing both an authorization and the settlement capture portion of the credit card transactions, and that's becoming more and more popular. Matt's going to show that. That involves upfront creating an RU, and then when we create the RI, processing it against the RU. And these scenarios with payment email, so a customer maybe doesn't have a payment profile, they have to enter one initially, and then there's situations where those payment profiles, which are the tokens, they can simply work with them. And JDE also, along with the portal, allows, you know, the invoice collections. We do it from the address book. It's a roll exit inside of the address book, allowing them to I should say, your finance accounting people to pay AR invoices. We have other use case scenarios. You see them on the bottom. Otis Elevator is an example. You know, we're using a work orders and contracts with EasyPay. Terminix uses us inside of Salesforce. So it's Gartner says you have to buy a platform and apps that's very API centric. We are. So that's an example with Terminix. Everything customer facing is Salesforce, and JDE is the transactional system of record, the GL, the AR, the AP. And so it's very, very flexible. We work with real estate management, with tenants and leases, and e-commerce. We have many companies like using Magento, and they want us to manage the payments dealing with that scenario. Just a little bit about the integration. I noticed the time here. With the email that I sent out, I mentioned an exclusive. We're the only vendor. My competitors, they make you buy, as an example, PayPal. And yeah, PayPal can work with pretty much any processor. But then again, you have processors like Adyen. I mean, eBay went from PayPal to Adyen, and they're the folks that created PayPal or used it initially. And so Adyen is a big player out there. They deprecated a hosted payment page. They went with a completely new way of integration, and that's what we're going to be focused on. Is you do the contract, you create what's called a MID. A MID is a merchant ID. So if you're collecting credit cards right now, you probably went to your bank, business services, merchant services. We need to do credit cards, so you probably have a MID. But more important, you might want to change, you know, the way that credit cards are billed to your company. It's very, very detailed. There's the interchange rate, which a debit card is very, very low, like 2%, and then, you know, American Express 2-3% back is a high interchange rate, and then they add basis points. So treasury departments and finance and accounting departments all the time are saying, you know what, we want to look at getting the best rate. We don't want to be constrained with the payment application, and we minimize that constraint because we simply say, you know, you give us the MID, you give us the processor, the gateway to work with, and we seamlessly work against it. This is just a little bit on the AWS, not the on-prem, but the AWS that you're seeing on the right. We require it for EasyPay because of the security. And once again, our PCI compliance, our auditors, and that our PCI auditors, our SOC 2 auditors, they're working against our AWS environment. This is a little bit more about how it's created. Like I said, Matt's going to go through the scenario, authorize.net. You can do, say, just an authorize, put a hold on the funds, all those different ways I talked about. At order crate, they say it's sales order crate, and then later on do the capture settlement portion. So a sale is authorize and capture. So that's where we're creating the RU up front and then the RI and cross-referencing the two. Or it could be a more, what I think of as traditional, just authorize at order crate and settle capture downstream in the sales order activity rules. And when Matt goes through situations like an order to cash with that last situation where sales order create, we're just doing the authorization, then it goes through the sales order, and then we do a settlement delay capture. And these are all flexible. And then, from there, we do the batch AR updates, do the reconciliation. And then beyond that, you're dealing with voids, partial full returns. So we have all of that functionality. Where in this one here, if we're doing what we call cash up front, that we're doing the auth and the capture, then we're bypassing the downstream settlement. We're doing it up here. Like I said, Matt's going to show that we're creating the RU scenario. This is Christie's. So Christie's came back to us and they said, hey, we've got a homegrown app called My Christie's. It deals everything with our customers that don't want to come into our showrooms like Rockefeller Center in New York. And so they're using the app. Can you give us the APIs with EasyPay so that we can embed it in our homegrown app? We can do that. Once again, the power of a low-code platform. As a matter of fact, Christie's, you see my cursor down here, billing information. So that's not traditional. What's traditional is what you see above it: card number, card name. This is the PAN number here. But the billing information for Christie's, they wanted to be able to, on the fly, create a new invoice tied to the order that people are making. Matt, you did this for Christie's, correct?
Yep.
Okay, and so what's different about this is, once again, how the security, the encryption, the ability to do this, more personalized type of processing, correct?
Yeah, the big thing there was most gateways deal with the hosted payment page, and with the billing address, you can default in an address, but it's still a free form entry. But with Adyen, which is what they're using here, they let you control the form. So the billing address dropdown, that's actually coming from data within JD Edwards. And there's no free form typing. So they have to use an existing billing address to check out. And that has to do with some like fraud rules and stuff that they have in place at Christie's.
Absolutely. And so it's and technology wise, it's client side encryption. And by the client, it's Adyen controlling the web page directly at that field level, right?
Correct. Yep. And we actually just migrated to something called Adyen Components. It's one of their newer features. It's very similar to client-side encryption, but just slightly easier to use from a development perspective.
Okay, great. And this is why I made the webinar touching on this point. Adyen deprecated hosted payment pages, and that's huge for the last 15 years. And hosted payment pages, an iframe connect right to the gateway, where once again the secure information, the card processing, the transmit, and the storage, it all takes place at the gateway. But it's evolving, and this is why you got to consider a modern platform that gives you the freedom of choice. And with that, Matt, I'm going to turn it over to you. Go ahead and start the demo, and Matt's going to go through a lot of different use case scenarios.
All right, let's go ahead and share my screen. Let me know when you can see that.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, we'll go ahead and start the demo from an internal JDE user, or like a CSR's perspective. High level overview of the demo. We'll do a couple transactions within JDE as the CSR. So we'll do invoice collection, a few sales order payments, and then we'll switch over to the AR portal, do a few transactions as a customer, and then switch over to an internal user using the AR portal outside of JDE. And then there's a few customer scenarios that we'll look at as well at the very end. And if there's time, then I want to show you a little bit about EasyProcess, which is our platform that all of this is developed on. All right, so we'll go ahead and sign into JDE. And we'll go ahead and look up a customer in the address book. So first thing I want to do is take a look at some payment profiles for our 4242 account. So let's look him up. He's Capital Systems. And this is what Doug was talking about with some of the EasyPay forms that are within JDE. So if you look at the row exit here, there's two new row exits, one for invoice collection and one for payment profile. So payment profile will bring us to the payment pad in context of that customer, and it will let us manage the payment profiles on file for that customer. So right now, 4242 has a Visa ending in 1111 on file. Let's go ahead and add a MasterCard here. So when I hit add new payment method there, that's bringing up the CyberSource form. And if I right click in here and say view frame source, you can see that we're going to test secure acceptance.cybersource.com. So the card information is actually being entered directly on the gateway. None of that information is accessible to EasyPay, or none of it flows through any of our network or our customers' network. So it's very important for PCI. So let's go ahead and fill this out here. Do MasterCard. All right, and what's happening now is CyberSource has taken that information, it's tokenized it, and now EasyPay has saved that payment profile on our side, but we only save the token and then the expiration date for the card just for the customer to see. And now that payment profile is accessible for use for future transactions. Something else that I wanted to show here was the dual gateway functionality. So some of our customers have requirements where they process credit cards through a gateway like CyberSource, but then they process ACH payments through a different gateway and or processor. So this is United Transactions, and the form here is ours, but they give us a tokenization API for that. But it's very similar in terms of how that works. It's tokenized straight from United Transactions, and then we save a token on our side. So let's go ahead and fill this out as well. Grab a routing number.
As Matt is doing that, eCheck, ACH for North America, that's managed by an organization called NACHA. And once again, it's a different set of security requirements, but still the same. That routing number and more importantly, the account number, it needs to be secure.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so now that's done. And again, we've tokenized that and we have an ACH on file as well. So now let's take a look at invoice payment for the same customer. So let's go to the invoice collection row exit. And again, it's bringing us to that same EasyPay application, but now it's in context of what we call open invoice and payment. And what this does is it's looking at JDE for all the open invoices, and this is all real-time data from JDE. And it's showing us the open amounts, everything available for payment. So let's go ahead and make a payment against this invoice here. We'll do a $750 payment. You have the option to do partial, or you could just leave the full amount for payment as well.
And that comes from a configuration parameter, which are akin to processing options in JD Edwards.
Yep, exactly. And we'll review the configuration settings a little bit later as well. All right, so there's our invoice 3303, line 1, and we're paying $750. So you can see there's a $750 remaining balance here. Let's go ahead and pay that with the ACH. All right, so what happened there is we went to the gateway and we processed the payment for $750. After that was confirmed successfully, we then went to JDE and we created a cash receipt and applied it against that invoice for $750. We do that invoice or the cash receipt creation via standard JDE business functions. And there's also the option, we do support the orchestrations as well as a method of integration. So that's good to keep in mind. All right, so that's paid now. And if we scroll down, we can see our payment reference number, and it was this was a sale transaction. So we took the funds immediately and then applied that against that invoice. So we can go ahead and look that invoice up now. 3303. So the open amount has been reduced. And then if we go and look at the receipts here, there's the ACH ending in 6888. And that was made today for $750. All right, so now let's switch over to sales orders. So the first type of sales order that we're going to do is what we call our interactive sales order. So this is a CSR entering an order, and then they're presented with the same payment pad, and they can choose a card on file or send a payment email to have the customer enter that card on file. So let's go ahead and enter a new order. And we do a lot of our demo options based on payment terms. So 6404, if we look here, is a credit card payment terms. And this is basically what triggers that interactive workflow or the interactive flow. Let's go ahead and enter an item here. All right, so our sales order number is 3315. And this customer currently does not have any cards on file. So like Doug said, we can do payment emails. So if there's no cards on, or if there is a card on file, you can just process the payment. But if there's not, then you have the option to go ahead and send out a payment email to the customer. Okay, payment request has been sent. If I come to my emails here, there we go. So there's our sales order 3315, and there's no cards on file. Let's go ahead and add a Visa for this customer. All right, so there's the Visa, and then let's go ahead and process that payment. Authorization success. We have our paid amount of $157.47, and then again our payment reference number. And this is a little different. So in this scenario, for credit card orders, we're doing a full authorization up front, and then we'll settle that transaction after shipment. So we've only put a hold on the credit card at this point. And then again, if we go back to our internal reps screen here and then refresh, you can see there's the card on file and the customer has taken care of the payment already, which is good. All right, so now let's go ahead and take a look at some of the AR processing for this order. So let's look up the invoice for this order. If I scroll and filter on sales order number here. Right now, there's no invoices that exist for this order. So let's go ahead and we're going to simulate the, pick, pack, ship all the way through invoicing and just run sales update here. Wrong version. I'll just run it against the order that we use, 3315. Looks like JDE's freezing up just a little bit here.
So what Matt showed with the email to the customer, where the customer clicked on that payment. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, just finishing up the.
But I just wanted to mention
Those updates.
that's removing, once again, people could look, credit card information is toxic, which is the correct way of looking at it. And so you're completely removing the credit card, in this case, creating the payment profile inside of the gateway from your local area network. It's the customer clicking on the email payment button, them working against AWS and the payment processor gateway.
All right, so that's finished. Our order has been invoiced. Also, if we look at that sales order, it's moved all the way to 999. So the status, just for our demo environment, we're skipping, print, pack, ship, all that. But the funds can be captured at any status. This is a configuration setting on our side. But like I mentioned, we do have an open invoice for this order. And now what I'm going to do is run something called the delay capture. And what that's going to do, it's going to find that order that's at the delay capture status, and it's going to capture the funds for that credit card. So that's EasyPay delay capture. Normally, this would be like a scheduled job that you would run, after your nightly JDE processes run as well.
So delay capture initiates the funds coming into your merchant bank.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so there we go. We have an RU now. So the funds were captured against that credit card. Again, if we go and look at that sales order, we can go to the EasyPay row exit now under order and reopen that payment form. And if we scroll down here, the funds are now settled, and you can see we captured the full amount of 157.47. All right, and now we have the two invoices open, the cash payment and then the actual order invoice. So the very final step would be to true these up and run something what we call auto apply receipts. And this is basically doing invoice matching with that unapplied payment versus the orders invoice.
And I think people get this, but these are batch processes that are not turned on, and for the purpose of the demo, Matt's going in and running them.
Yep.
Manually.
Yep. All right. So our open amount is.
Go ahead.
Yep. Our open amount is closed, and then if I go into receipts here. Again, so we paid for it with that Visa ending in 1111, and it was a payment amount of 157.47. And that's the first scenario of the interactive order, end-to-end, authorizing the card, doing the delay capture, and then closing the AR at the end. The next order scenario is the workflow automation. So in this case, there'll be no interaction from the CSR other than the order entry itself. So let's go ahead and do that against customer.
So once again, on that last order, that page came up after entering the line item, the header line items, the page came up. And even though Matt selected doing an email payment email to the customer, if there was a token, or the CSR could have created a token, a payment token, and managed it herself. In these scenarios that you're going to see here, it's quick, it's 100% background, what we call payment email to the customer. A lot of companies are wanting to completely eliminate, credit card, especially the people side of credit card, seeing the credit card number and things like that. So they go with this approach.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Another thing is this is a cash customer, so full prepay along with that workflow automation. So instead of doing the auth and then the capture, we're going to settle the funds up front as well. So let's go ahead and read this order. All right, that form did not pop up in this case, but I am going to grab this order number. And if I go to my emails, Actually, so we do have a job that runs in the background that basically scans JDE for these new orders. I'm just going to give it a bump instead of waiting. It runs every minute, but I'm impatient. There we go. So we got pending authorization, and that's our order number 3316. So we can go ahead and resolve that. 3316, again with the Visa, and we'll go ahead and process that payment. All right, so again, the difference here is we've settled the funds up front. We've captured the full amount of the 251.94. So now if we go back to JDE and we look up invoices against that order, we've not shipped the order yet. It's still sitting at status 540. But since we settled the funds, there's the unapplied cash record for the 251.94. So let's go ahead and finalize this as well. Let's take a look at the sales order. You can see it's sitting at status 540, and then we'll run update customer sales again to invoice the order. Okay, if I just refresh here, this should go to status 999. Yep, perfect. Then if we go back to invoices, there we go. Now the invoice exists. And then again, we're not running the delay capture job in this case because we've already settled the funds. But we will run the auto apply receipts job that will close out that RU and apply it to the RI. There we go. So that's closed out. And then again, if we go to receipts, that's the payment of 251.94 with that same Visa ending in 1111. All right, I think that is it from the CSR internal JDE perspective. Now I'm going to switch over to the customer portal demo. Let's close out of some of this stuff. All right. All right, so customer portal. I do have an existing customer, but we do have a registration option, and there's a few different ways we could do this. You can have them register with a manual approval. You can have internal users create customer records, or you could do what we call invoice validation. So if the customer knows their customer number, a recent invoice number, and then a total, we can validate that information against JD Edwards and then automatically allow them to register, and it would create their user account right away. But I'll go ahead and log in as my registered customer here. So this user is tied against the same 4242 account that we were using when we did the invoice collection. All right. So here on the left are all of the pages that are available in the customer portal. So we do have an order history, just as sort of like an inquiry kind of a thing where they can go in and search for past orders, see the status and amounts and stuff like that. Then we have account summary, and this just shows some summary information about the account. Some of this information does come from basically the account JDE business functions, and some of the values kind of depend on running jobs in JDE. But we can change how some of these values are calculated and things like that with no problem. Then there's payment methods, which is very similar to what we saw from within JDE, which is just managing payment methods that are on file. So you can see earlier we added the MasterCard and the ACH. Those are all available here, but we can do the same thing and add a new card on file as that customer. You can also remove, for example, the ACH, and it'll delete that from being on file as well. All right. All right, and then there's open invoice and payment. So we'll go ahead and go through a scenario here with open invoice and payment. And we'll go ahead and pay off this invoice for $171. All right, and here I want to do something a little bit different and show you how easy it is for us to switch between gateways. So the gateway for credit cards that we've been interacting with has been CyberSource. But I do have a Clover gateway account set up. I do have all of the integration details already set up in our configuration settings. But I just want to show you how easy it is to switch from CyberSource to Clover. So I'm going to switch back over to our Easy process, which is our development platform. And I'll go into some configuration options here. Look for easy payment. And this is some of the config options that Doug was talking about. So just security around adding different links, IVR, processing fees. There's also logic on like authorization conditions for orders, different hold codes and stuff that can all be configured here. But we'll go ahead and look at the payment gateway. So right now it's set to CyberSource. I'm going to just switch that over to Clover. And these are just some of the defaults we have in our demo environment. So Adyen, Authorized.net, BluePay, PayPal. We'll go ahead and switch to Clover. And then I'll hit save here. And then I'm going to switch back over to the customer portal. Right now, these are our two tokenized payment profiles that we had on file, but I am just going to refresh the page here. Since we switched gateways, those payment profiles are no longer applicable. Those were tokenized against CyberSource and they won't work against Clover. So we have to add a new payment method now. And now when I hit add new payment method, this is the Clover form. You can see, you know, their privacy policy and stuff at the bottom here.
And Clover, by the way, is part of this First Data, which is their new name is Fiserv, right?
Yep. So I'll save that. But again, it's very similar to CyberSource, whereas it's just tokenizing this payment profile, and then that gets returned to EasyPay for use for the transaction. And then, of course, we have you know, authorize and capture and sale APIs all in the background to send that token to the gateway and actually make the payment as well. All right, authorization success. And this time it was against Clover. And you can kind of tell by the payment reference just being slightly different. They have letters in their payment reference number. CyberSource are, it's like an 18-digit number. We have the settled transaction. And then again, if I go to JDE and look at this invoice, we should be able to see that same payment being applied. I think it was pay item 5. Yep, it's closed. There we go. And there's the receipt with that same Visa ending in 1111. That's the common Visa test card against like all gateways. All right. And we'll go ahead and switch that back to CyberSource just to show that the Clover token will go away again and will be presented with our CyberSource tokens again. There we go. There's our CyberSource tokens. All right, so that was invoice payments. If we continue down our list here of pages available, we also have unapplied cash. So this is just the customer kind of prepaying against nothing. They just want to prepay something that can be applied to a future invoice. So let's go ahead and make a $444 payment. This is for webinar 4/12/23. There we go. There's our 444. We can process that payment against the MasterCard. So in this case,
Matt, we should also mention that if you want to apply multiple payment profiles against a transaction, that's available too.
Yes. Yeah. So for invoice payment, you go through and partial pay invoices, and you can put it against multiple cards. And then for a sales order, you can type in partial payments amount and put it against each individual card as well. Absolutely. All right. Unapplied cash. So we can go down to payment history now. And this is an inquire from JDE showing, we processed a payment for the against the MasterCard ending in 4444 for an amount of $444. I didn't plan that. And then, yeah, so just some other features about some of our grids. Again, this is real-time data from JD Edwards, using database queries to fetch the information. But then we also have some filtering at the top here, so you can search on receipt number, you can search on invoice number, pay date, all that kind of stuff as well. Then if we go up to invoice history, very similar. It's querying data directly out of JD Edwards, showing basically all invoices, whether it's open or paid, along with some details. So if there's multiple pay items for the invoice, they'll show up here. And then we can include any of the fields from JD Edwards to be included here as well.
And I do want to remind everybody that we do a lot of projects just involving our AR portal. And it provides, as you can tell, a lot of the payment functionality people are looking for, especially folks wanting to get away from paper processes with AR, mailing out invoices and dealing with checks, which is accelerating greatly, especially in the COVID and post-COVID era.
And then, yeah, so this is statements. Again, it's just inquiry out of JDE with the statements that you generate. All right. And then the last thing I want to show from the customer's perspective here is auto pay. So again, we're signed in as a customer against that 4242 account. And we have two different scenarios for auto pay. So we have auto pay for sales order, and this will basically that workflow automation that you saw where we sent the payment email. If the customer is enrolled in an auto pay for sales order, it will just automatically authorize the credit card on file for that sales order with no interaction from the customer or the CSR needed. And then the customer does have the option to set a max payment amount. So they don't want their card to be charged, an outrageous amount. They can limit it here as well. But we're going to dig into the auto pay for invoices. So let's go ahead and enroll. And then we have our different payment methods that are on file here. Let's go ahead and select a Visa. And I am going to give it a max payment amount of, let's say, $900. And then for the frequency, you could choose monthly, weekly. I also had another customer request daily. They just wanted to, every single time an invoice was created, it would just go ahead and pay that right away. So let's do monthly, and then I'm going to choose the 12th here, just so we'll actually get a payment to be processed. All right, so I've enrolled in AutoPay. You can see the timestamps are updated every time you make a change here. And then let's go ahead and run this. So again, we're going to switch back to the batch jobs, and these are normally scheduled, but I'm running it manually for the demo. And we're going to run EasyPay AutoPay. All right, so that's running. And then if I go to history here, we get some information about what's happening. There's some logging and stuff like that as the AutoPay is being processed. Let's go ahead and let that finish. And then I'll download that and we can take a look at it. All right, so we signed up for AutoPay with 4242 and we set a maximum amount of $900. AutoPay will go and look at the most past due invoice available first until it runs out of money to pay, or if there's no cap, it'll just pay all of them that are open. But we found invoice 3123, and then that payment was applied. You can see the payment ID and batch number as well here. So let's go ahead and take a look at JDE for that invoice. There you go. So it paid partial because we had a max payment amount on it. But if we look at the receipt, we should see that $900 payment. Should be the last one. Yep. So there's the $900 payment against that Visa 1111. And yeah, so that's AutoPay. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take a look at how internal users can interact with the customer portal outside of JD Edwards. So let's go ahead and log in as Max Bourne. And Max Bourne is a registered internal user that has access to all of the accounts. So like Doug was saying earlier, internal users basically, they have some things, like in case there's any failures, so failed authorization or failed invoice payments, they do come here and manage that as well. So let's say there's a connection issue with JDE or basically any reason, you can come in here and manage the failed invoice payment, and there's some different options. You can resubmit, you can try to re-verify the payment, or you can just skip it and close it, just in case it, there's no action needed. So that's just some of our internal like error handling and stuff like that that's available. But from a CSR's perspective, they want to do actions in context of a customer. So let's go ahead and search up that 4242 account, and we'll go ahead and impersonate them. You can impersonate them on a few different levels of access, but we'll go ahead and look at the EasyPay customer profile that we have set up. All right, you can see at the top, we're impersonating 4242. But from here on out, Max Bourne's able to interact with the customer portal as if he was a customer logged in as 4242. The only differences would be he also has access to do things like refunds and things of that nature. But other than that, it's everything that we saw from the customer's perspective is accessible to Max Bourne as well. You can even go into AutoPay and see that they're registered with the max $900 and all of that. All right, Doug, so we have 5 minutes left. Do you want to take a look at Rawlings Cash App, or do you want to?
Yeah, I think that's important. A lot of people are expressing interest in that functionality. If you could show that quickly, that'd be great.
All right, cool. Yep. All right. So Rawlings had a very specific need on, they weren't happy with some of the Cash App processing within JD Edwards. So what we did for them was build an upload utility so that they can apply cash that was sent in like via lockbox or checks or things like that. And it's basically reusing functionality that we already have, but there's an Excel interface that's a little smart. So let's go ahead and log into Rawlings here. And I do have a file that I prepared for this. All right, so let's look at Cash App upload. You can see all the previous uploads that were done. But this download template will give you a file like this that has some headers where basically you just need to fill out some of the information, or copy it from some other template. But basically these are the required fields for applying a payment against an invoice. So you have the account number, invoice, pay item, doc type, company, the payment amount, and then you do have the option of doing deductions, write-offs against that invoice as well. And then if you need to future date the GL date, you can also update the GL date as well. One thing to note here is, so for this invoice, I'm paying a little bit more than the open amount, and we'll see what I mean by the application's a little smart. It will know that there's only a certain amount open and put the rest as an unapplied payment. So let's go ahead and upload that. All right. So that's uploaded. It's done that logic check that I was talking about. So we have the 167.73 applied to this invoice, 114 applied here, but then the rest is unapplied because there's only 114.68 open. And this is just kind of like a staging area for this. So you can review what is going to be pushed to JDE before we actually do it. But then you click this button down here, create receipt from existing payment, and that will, actually apply the payment to JDE. All right, processed. And we can look, we have a payment ID and batch number here. And then if we go to paid invoices, there we go. So this is the payment that we just uploaded. You can see part of it was applied, part of it's unapplied. And then this is that second invoice where we just did the 167.73. Yeah, that's about it for the Cash App demo. Doug, yep, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. And first off, Kelly, are there questions?
No, not yet, but this would be a good time to remind anybody if they have any questions to put them in the chat right now.
And you know what, Matt, let's go a couple of minutes over and very briefly show why I promote any strategic app, and this is a strategic application. I mean, when you get into a full install and you talk about business unit, company codes, order types, line type logic, back order logic, I mean, there's process flows, and once again, returns, partial, full. So we're having to marry, the credit card transaction with the JD Edwards, and we've only covered it high level. We've got it all figured out when you touch on all those scenarios, and we're able to do it, these various workflows, because we're coming from a platform. Matt, briefly show the folks how easy it is. And if you want to have development or project ownership, we give you the keys to the platform. In fact, we have full e-learning. It comes with the licensing. Go ahead, Matt, and just overview why they should look at the technology system as part of the payment app decision.
Okay, yep. All right, so for this, we're going to focus in on the payment history page. We're going to switch over to our development platform. Everything is browser based, and it is all drag and drop, XML, things like that. But let's go ahead and make a change to this payment history page. We'll focus in on the page and then, the change, and then I'll give a little overview on how the rest of the page works as well. All right, so here I'm going to go to my workbench and I'm going to create a new task. And we're going to say webinar changing doc type. So our platform requires a task and a project to exist here.
This is part of what's called DevOps.
Yep. All right, so we got the new task, and then I'm going to create a project for that task. All right. And what I'm going to do is, I don't like showing RI and RU to the customer. They don't really know what that means. So I'm going to change this to the JDE UDC description and just show you how easy that is to do. So we're going to take a look at this paid invoices page, and we're going to check that out here in our development environment. So let's go ahead and add the web page, look for paid invoices, and we're going to check that out. And all of our applications come with a development, a test, and a production environment. So there's no way to ever do changes directly in test or prod. They always have to go from DV through QA to production via our source control here that's built into the platform. All right, so let's go ahead and open that paid invoices webpage. And this is our webpage / widget canvas, where you can see basically all of the fields and the formatting and stuff like that that's done on the page. If I just kind of flip back and forth here, you can see date range filters, search, the search button. We have our grid with the different fields coming from JDE. That all kind of maps to what you see here. And then if we look at data sources, which is where we're pulling the information, we can open that up really quick. And this is our method canvas or our process canvas. And all this is doing is doing some checks on filtering for the date filters that are input from the user. And then it's running a query. Each of these little blue boxes is what we call a service. And basically it's just some pre-built code behind the scenes that take in some inputs and then give you, it either performs an action or gives you some data back. So this here is SQL query. If we open that up, we have a connection instance for JD Edwards. That's a config setting. It's just pointing to a JD Edwards environment through our cloud connector. And then this is the SQL query that's actually executing to fetch that data. So we're going to FO3B14. And this one doesn't, so this one joins FO3B14 on FO3B11. And then we have some filtering down here. And we do use parameterization, to make sure there's no issues with like SQL injection and things of that nature as well. So that's run, and then this is then tied to this grid via the field properties here on the right side. So you can see the text here. If I go in, it's that get paid invoice query, and it's looking at our RZ doc. So that's just kind of like a quick overview on how the tool set works, but let's go ahead and focus in on that change of changing the doc type. So let's go ahead and look at this doc type here. And again, it's being pulled from RZ DCT. And I'm going to add something called a value transformation. And we have some predefined rules here, but we can say convert to JDE UDC description. And then some examples here, you just type in the UDC code. So the UDC code for doc type is 00T. We could just go ahead and add that and then hit save. And we've been doing the demo from the development environment. You can see here in DV. So if I just refresh here, there's the document type description that's just been updated directly in our DV environment. And then from there, you'd go ahead and go to the project task. You can mark this as testing, and then you can promote it to the QA environment. It would go through testing and QA, and then again promoted from QA to production on a scheduled release.
Matt, that's perfect. So we covered a lot, especially Matt's portion, going through the various use case scenarios, showing both inside of JD Edwards, JD Edwards from a payment email, taking out or removing, I should say, PCI scope from the client's local area network. That's exactly what that payment email does, to the AR portal. As you can see, we do many projects in different areas of the business, as I noted. We will send you the email and the recording. Kelly will do that. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. Everyone have a great rest of the day. Thank you very much. Bye now.